Our first item tonight is a proclamation for Fair Housing Month. Whereas the Congress of the United States passed the Civil Rights Act of 1968, of which Title VIII declared that the law of the land would now guarantee the rights of equal housing opportunity, and whereas the City of DeSoto is committed to the mission and intent of Congress to provide fair and equal housing opportunities for all, and whereas vigorous efforts of fair housing groups along with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development serve to combat housing discrimination, and whereas equal housing opportunity is a condition of life in DeSoto that can and should be achieved, now therefore in pursuit of the shared goal and responsibility of providing equal housing opportunities for all residents, I, Rick Walker, Mayor of the City of DeSoto, Kansas, do hereby join the national celebration by proclaiming the month of April 2025 as Fair Housing Month in DeSoto, and express the hope that this year's observance will promote fair housing practices throughout DeSoto. Our next item tonight is our consent agenda. Tonight on the consent agenda, we have approved minutes from the March 20th City Council meeting, approve pay ordinance number 994, and approve agreement with KDOT for Sunflower Road Trail. Is there any item anyone would wish to remove for further discussion? Or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane?
Yes.
McMorrin?
Yes.
Hanamichael?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Tripp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, our next item is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. The comments that are discussed under call to public may or may not be acted on by the council during this meeting. There is a 4-minute time limit. Does anyone wish to address the council under call to public? All right. I'm not seeing any takers, so we will go to item 3A, old business. Consider resolution 2062, establishing a benefit district for the provision of sanitary sewer service to properties along 95th Street and Lexington Avenue.
Yes, Mayor, with your permission, I'll introduce this topic. Before you tonight is a resolution that would be the first step in the formation of a special taxing district for properties mostly along 95th Street and a few along Lexington Avenue that would fund the construction of sewer service to those parcels. I think we're all aware as the construction in the area started along 95th Street specifically, and as we started to discuss some future planning for that area, engaged with the property owners who were pretty negatively affected by that activity about their desires moving forward and the possibility that was made possible by the construction of other infrastructure in the area, that this area would one day be able to be served with sewer, and thereby maybe more valuable for those wishing to sell their property. So over the course of last fall, engaged with that group, we commissioned a study from PEC last summer that concluded that it indeed was possible, and I'll scroll down to a map here. Came up with several different scenarios for providing sewer service to the area. So this map shows the proposed benefit district area, largely along 95th Street between Lexington and Sunflower Road. This will tie into the sewer mains that are being constructed now for the Sunflower Sewer Benefit District that's going to cross this area and head out to the Astra Enterprise Park. The ultimate scenario here is shown here, where these parcels will be served by these sewer lines. This is a preliminary layout that was done by PEC last summer. They established a cost of this ultimate district of about $3.5 million, which in concept would be spread equally per square foot basis among all the owners. After a series of several meetings, we were able to get enough feedback from the residents many of whom are here tonight, to circulate a petition. And the petition has now been submitted to you. That is included in your packet materials. This includes 24 properties, about 9.5 million square feet. I'm not sure how many acres that equates to. But of the 24 properties, we have the consent signature of 18 of those. And that land area represents about 67% of that entire benefit district area. So there were 6 property owners of 6 properties that chose not to sign. One of whom is this 38.3 acre parcel that we don't have a signature for. This is half of a larger 80 acre parcel that is set to be developed, that's already in the Sunflower Benefit District. So we're working a separate agreement with them so that they would agree to be in both districts and essentially be assessed both districts. We've agreed in principle to that, but we just don't have their signature at this time to report to you. Another one of the properties is here at the intersection at the northwest corner of Lexington and 95th. It has a purchase contract pending. Currently, the current owner didn't want to sign, or we were unable to really engage with the current owner much on that one. And there are a few other properties owners that didn't sign who were aware of it and don't want to be included in this. But all those aside, we do have 67%. So under statute, if you have more than 50% of the land area willing to be assessed, then the council can choose to form the district and essentially enforce the assessment on the rest. So here we have 67%. That's not a policy decision that this body has ever been faced with. That's obviously something to consider. This would be the first step in a multi-step process where the benefit district is formed. Then I'll pull up this. So the benefit district would be formed. The petition establishes the maximum tax assessment for each parcel that we would be able to assess. So the project that we have scoped and the cost estimates that we have now would be the maximum that we could assess. If there are overages, then the city would have to pay for those overages, and we wouldn't be able to collect those from the residents. So they've signed on for the maximum assessment. If this passes tonight, then we're clear to go ahead and start the design and construction of the project, get those costs in, perform the improvements, and at the end of all that, issue the final assessments at the end of it all. It's a multi-year process. We suspect that the construction would take place between 2025 and 2026. So, about a year from now, or a little more than a year from now, be wrapping up the construction. That's where we prepare the final statement for the final costs. In the middle of 26 or so, that goes to the county's office, and then it's assessed in 2027. So property tax assessments from this would conceivably not hit until the 2027 collection cycle. So your packet information has a bit more detail about specifics of the project. Want to thank Councilman Daniels and Councilwoman Tripp for their help in the coordination with the neighbors. Has been quite a work done on that side of it. So I think that's it tonight. The action that's being suggested is a resolution. I believe it's 2062. That in essence would establish that first step in the benefit district formation. So I'll stand for any questions.
Okay. Questions for Mike, for City Administrator?
Not a question, but more of just a comment.
Okay.
That it was, as noted in the packet with the negotiations going on with the 38 acre parcel and the one other parcel that, has discussed the intent to sign, that would bring the total up to 89%. And just, of course, when considering this as a motion, I think it's important to also, to not just look at where we are exactly as a percentage of land area at this moment, but where we're working to be and where there is intent to be from that total land mass, kind of in agreement and working towards agreement.
Okay, thank you for that comment. Anyone else? Kevin?
Question to,
Yep.
this is probably to refresh me a little bit, but the tract on the north side of K-10 drains south to this direction, is that correct?
Yeah.
How is that figured into the capacities?
It's figured into the capacities, but it's not figured into as part of
But
this.
it is figured into the line size?
Yeah, the line side, you'll see it's a 12-inch line here.
At a place where it would generally tie in?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, just wanted to confirm, thank you.
Any other questions from council?
I was gonna say, I've got some comments, but I think if there's not any others, might give the residents a chance to speak. And I'll reserve my comments till after.
All right. Typically not a public hearing item, but we have a lot of folks here interested in the area, so I would invite anyone that wanted to come to the podium and make comment on the item. You could do that right now. You would just state your name and address for the record when you start. Appreciate it.
Good evening. My name is Zach Galtney. I live at 34860 West 95th Street, so we're on the north side of 95th Street. Been there for, about 9 years. Obviously, I don't need to rehash everything kind of that we've gone through over the last couple of years. It's been a wild ride. But in general, the area has just become 180-degree opposite of what we moved into. And is no longer an area that we see fit for us to, continue raising our kids and, where we want to be. I think, we talk about the 11-acre tract on the northeast. I don't know. I know Quick Trip had it under contract at one point. Maybe they do again. I don't want to live a few doors down from a Quick Trip. There was a period a couple of years ago also where the property to the east of us was under contract with an apartment, complex builder, and it's going to happen, right? The area is going to get developed. We all know that. I think we fought against it for a long time before we kind of realized, well, we might as well just go with the flow and try and turn this into a situation where we can get out. So I just want to say thank you to, Mike, Rob, and Courtney for all the time that they've spent with us over the last really year. I think it was about a year ago that I first talked to you about the benefit district at one of those K-10 hearings at the high school. And the same day I think I talked to you. I know we all know it's been a lot of work and time and energy for you guys, but we really appreciate it. So I guess, at this point, we are where we're at. It's no longer a place where we want to live. It's going to be developed. I would prefer to try and get out of there before they put up an apartment complex, next to our property, or before they put a Quick Trip up a couple doors down from us. So, requesting that, you really take a hard look at this and try and help us, because our property's been for sale for 2 years. We've had a couple of interested parties come, but no real offers. We've, even the last year we've been listed on MLS, so if somebody wanted to come and make a residential offer to us, they would have, and they're not. So, our request, help us. Help us help you, I think, at this point, because I think there's also a significant benefit for the city, right, to help us get out and try and develop this area into something that the city can use. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment.
Thank you.
Sorry I'm so slow.
That's all right, Richard.
Richard Cisco, 34675 West 95th. I have never seen that map on that wall right there. The way that is lined out, those three properties along Lexington there will have to drain to the west down through my property to get to the sewer line you want to put in. That's going to totally destroy my property. That's the first I'd seen that, and I couldn't believe it when I seen it. I've got the other map right here in front of me that showed it going along going along Lexington. That's going along the back side of those businesses. And I own the property on the back side of them. It's downhill, so they're going to have to dig a line from that store hall, an electric company, and the city to hook up to that sewer line they're putting along the creek. Is that right, Mike?
Yeah, Richard,
Huh?
let me pull up the map that you've got in front of you.
I got the one right here that I was just looking at.
Hold it up for me, let me see it. Make sure we're on the same map.
As soon as I can get through all this paperwork.
Is it this here on the screen? Okay, that's the map of the boundary of the benefit district.
Well, you told me that the sewer was going on that boundary line. And that's the way it looks on that
You and I
map.
walked it about a month ago. We were
Huh?
out there on that real nice day in
But we
February.
didn't talk about that part of it.
Sure we did.
Not that part on that end of the field down there.
Okay,
Because that's gonna have to come back to the west to get into that sewer line.
so here's your property here. I mean, well, it's hard to see the cursor, I understand. But that sewer line's got to go on, across on the southern part of your property.
I agree.
Not all the way to the top of the hill.
That's
but on the
exactly
other side
right.
of the other side of the
Okay.
creek, right? We talked about that.
Okay, yes, we talked about that, but we didn't talk about sewering those buildings on the other end.
Sewering these buildings, the ones at front on Lexington Avenue?
Yes.
You mean? Yeah. So it's possible that a service line needs to come down that hill somewhere and connect to that sewer line. It's possible.
All three of them.
No, not all three. I think the mini storage can probably connect out here closer to the road.
Well,
This
maybe
facility
so.
here is
Maybe so.
The city's yard. That'll connect to the main on your neighbor to the west. So it might be there's one service line has to come.
I'm sure there's
come
two
in
there.
There may be one, maybe two.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, you know, you were just saying it's gonna be 40 or 50 feet wide. That's gonna totally wipe out all my trees on that bluff.
It will. It
Yeah.
will. Those trees, will be impacted. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to try not to impact all of them. So there's a good part of that that's up the hill, like you've been talking about.
Yeah.
That we'll try and leave. But there will be a significant corridor of trees that have to be removed to get this.
Well, yeah, I know, we talked about the one corridor through, but we didn't talk anything about the rest of that. I couldn't, when I seen that map, I said, that ain't gonna work.
Yeah.
You can't, you run somebody else's sewer over, down through my property.
And again, I'll remind you, like I did about a month ago, this is still schematic. You know,
Yeah.
I've done my best.
I know, but,
So you understand, there's going to be details, like we just talked before the meeting, like how are they going to access this? Are they going to want to come through your
Well,
driveway, or are they going
that was
to?
before I seen that map even,
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway.
So this map that I've shown here is a little more accurate, but still, it's not a design. It's a little better than the one I was showing before. You said you hadn't seen
Well.
before. This one's better, but I thought just to display it in general, that other one's a little.
Anyway, that was what my concern is. I know it doesn't make any difference to you all, but,
Well, it does, Richard, and we're
Well.
gonna have a lot of these discussions if this occurs.
Uh-huh.
We'll have a lot of this discussions as we go through design. If we decide to
like
go
I told you
forward,
before, we're not planning on going anywhere,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Anyway.
Understand.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
your
you,
comments, Richard.
Anyone else? Okay, sorry, Ken.
You didn't see me. I'm
I was
stealthy.
writing my notes from Richard's comment.
So I'm Cameron Klein. We live at 35276 West 95th Street. You know, our family has lived there, I guess, coming up on 25 years. And, you know, I echo a lot of the thoughts that Zach mentioned, that, you know, things have changed an awful lot there. So from our perspective, we look at this as knowing that the inevitable is coming, that more and more development is happening. You know, across the street from us, that, you know, the 80 acres sold, that's going to be developed. That will change the landscape. That's going to change, you know, more than, you know, what we would like. So, you know, from our perspective, I feel like it's inevitable that we'll have to move, not because, you know, we'll be forced to move, but just because we won't enjoy living there, right? And so, you know, I certainly realize that it's a challenge for sure for the council members. You know, we've talked about this, Rob and Courtney and Mike as well, that it feels like it's a question that I don't necessarily envy your decision on, because you know, with not everybody agreeing, it makes it a little bit more complicated, and I understand the reasons why people wouldn't agree to it. I get it. But I do think it's an important thing for it to move forward, and, you know, as a result of that, I'm asking that, you know, the council approves this. I do want to make a point. Courtney, Rob, Mike, you guys spent huge amounts of time doing this, and, you know, if you haven't been involved in something like this, you wouldn't know how much time is spent on it. But you guys spent tons of time. You know, the members of the public need to know that, because it does take a lot of time and effort to go through, the amount of coordination, trying to, you know, herd all the cats. It's a lot of work. So we really appreciate your time on that. But anyway, that's all I have for today.
Thanks, Cameron.
Anyone else? All right.
I want to start my comments directly addressing the residents of 95th Street. Whether you signed it, don't sign it, I appreciate and respect every single one of you for not only what you've been through, but when Zach first came to me and approached me, he's like, yeah, my neighbors and I want the sewer benefit district. And my question to him was, okay, you and a neighbor, or you and all the neighbors, because if it's you and one, we may not be able to help. And he was basically saying we need help. Leslie Jansen echoed that as well, of just need help. And I never expected the residents to come together in the neighborhood meetings like you did and be able to have the civil discourse, whether you agree or disagree with where this is going, that happened, and in the respectful way that it happened. And I just want to say I very much appreciate and respect that. Leslie was not able to be here tonight. I do have a email from her basically in support of the benefit district. She did sign it. She echoes a lot of things that happened with the residents there where, and we talked about this in the neighborhood meetings, where it is a gamble. What we saw in the presentation tonight is that it looks like going through the process, the assessments would not take place until late 27, which means there's about a 2.5-year window before, 2.5? Yeah, about 2.5-year window before any of the residents would see assessments. And therefore, most of them are trying to sell, wanting to sell, and so they're hoping that their property sells before the assessments take place. And therefore, whoever's buying it for development would then take on the burden of the assessments. But they know at the same time, and Leslie echoed this, that it's a risk they don't want to take, but it's a risk that they know makes their property marketable and makes it capable of being able to go to sale. And being able to get them to where they're happy in a place where they're not dealing with the development and the growth. We've worked hard across the board, like you've said, and we've gotten the majority. There are some that aren't. I had a great discussion with the Cisco's last night. And so it's one of those ones that there are some concerns. If it goes forward for the ones that did not sign, that I think we can address. So it's one that came out of an outcry of we need help, and this is one of the things that can do. The Southwest Growth Area Study was the other one that came out of it, of the neighbors going, this is gonna help us. So.
An easier decision would have been 100%, obviously. But I get that, you know, Richard and Judy are planning to live out their lifetime in the house that they built there, and I respect that, and I wish there was an easy way to separate out those that plan to stay and protect them from that assessment. We don't have that mechanism available, but that would be my choice, that if there was some way that would have been possible, that would have been what we would have implemented in this benefit district. I think with you know, the overwhelming support of the neighborhood, in my opinion, it would be very hard to not move forward with this. But I still have mixed feelings about those folks that I know that are going to stay there and take on that tax burden and not plan to benefit from it, you know, in their remaining time on their property. So, any other comments or questions from council?
I just want to echo the gratitude towards the neighbors and everyone who, you know, came together. And, you know, I was smiling before the meeting was called to order, kind of as it was getting called to order, because the kind of buzz and chatter in the room isn't typical ahead of a council meeting, but it was exactly the kind of community spirit that we felt at every meeting. Not everyone was agreeing 100% of the time, but, you know, the spirit with which Cameron and Zach first approached us was one of building a better path forward after, you know, going through some very significant challenges. And yes, I wish we were sitting here with 100% signatures and a really easy decision that we felt would benefit every single neighbor in that neighborhood. That would be the ideal situation. And you know, unfortunately, that's not where we are. But you know, I hope we can do something that is best for the community and helps the most residents we can to, and just again, I want to express how grateful I am to have been part of this process, because I think the spirit of those meetings and the spirit of the way everyone came together and worked on this just reflects so well on our community and who we are as DeSoto.
Thank you, Courtney. Any other comments from council? Questions? Ready for a motion, I think, then.
I will make a motion that we pass resolution 2062, forming the 95th Street Sewer Benefit District.
Second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Matt Warren,
Yes.
Lane,
Yes.
Hannah Michael,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Tripp,
Yes.
motion carries.
Thank you all for your hard work on this item. And we'll go on to item 4A. Receive results from Community Center Feasibility Study. Brandon?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Last summer, the council approved a feasibility study for a community center. Over the fall, a select committee of council members and staff worked with a consultant to create a DeSoto-specific survey, including questions about potential amenities and revenue sources. Tonight, our consultant Kathy will walk you through the results. Just a note, representatives from the YMCA are present in the room to answer any questions you may have. And we also did share this information with the school district for the review. Lastly, I would just like to thank the review committee members, including Councilmember Hannah-Michael, Councilmember Daniels, Jay, Justin, Whitney, and Maite for their work on this survey. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it over to Kathy.
Okay,
All right.
go ahead, Kathy, thank you.
Hello. Glad to be here. And as we go through this, I know a lot of you maybe have already read it, so if you have questions or things, feel free to stop me as we're going through it. We're going to start off just with a brief description of the study methodology. I think
if you
the slide is
just
going to
scroll
come
down.
up.
Oh, on
Yeah, it's- yeah.
gotcha.
There we go.
Thank you. I'll get it.
I was told that there was going to be pictures.
Yes, you're right.
Very good. Okay, so yes, I am one page past that. Yes, just to kind of briefly go over the study methodology for those of you who maybe weren't involved in that process. But the purpose of the study, as Brandon noted, was just to gain public support, or to gauge public support, likely utilization of a community center partnering with YMCA. And then we did have a couple questions about a child care facility too that we'll get into later on. To do this, Mark and I have partnered on several studies like this in the Kansas City area. And so what we do is it's a mixed mode where we do 400 surveys by phone, and we draw the area that to be surveyed there is the area that the community center would have to kind of pull from to make it make sense to build it. So we did, and I'll get into the area here in a minute, but we did 400 surveys over the phone. And then also we sent out, and those of you who live in DeSoto probably received a postcard that gave every household in DeSoto the opportunity to also do the survey online, which is great because rarely in this research business that I've been in for over 40 years do you have the pure sample like that where everybody really does have an opportunity to give their opinion. That's ideal. And we did get about a 5% response rate, which I know seems low, but in this day and age is quite good. So we ended up with, when you combine the people in DeSoto that we surveyed by phone, plus the online with a sample of 222 DeSoto proper residents as well. And we used that sample to look at results when we wanted to see how DeSoto folks, specifically what they thought of answers to the questions, but it's really that sample of 400 that we'll be focused on primarily in these results. And so the next page then, here is the total survey area that I was mentioning. This is how we drew the sample. These are the areas that we included, and we set quotas to achieve a balanced sample proportionate to the number of households. You'll see there that based on these approximations, census data is always sort of an approximation, but you'll have household counts and the percent of households. That pretty much mirrors the obtained sample, that last column, as well, give or take, plus or minus a few percents here and there. I will note that in Olathe, we did not include that whole zip code because everybody on the team felt that that would be too much representation for Olathe. So we only surveyed the people that were north of Santa Fe Street. We kind of drew you have to kind of draw the line somewhere.
Was there an east-west boundary on that zip code too, or no?
Not an east-west, just a north-south.
Because
Good
that goes
question.
all the way to I-35. So, all right.
So then that is included in these too. So you take out that 16,000 households in Olathe, it's really more like 30-some thousand households, but we didn't include all of the ones to the south. Or actually, I noted it there, it's about 66% of that zip code did get included. So the next slide shows the sample characteristics for the total area that I just mentioned, the 403, which will be based, like I said, focusing on, at the most part, and then also the DeSoto proper, that 222. And this is just to kind of show you who we listened to, kind of just to show you it's a mix of ages, incomes, et cetera. We didn't just interview people, my age and older. So that is, and we do set quotas for that too. So we don't let that just go. For those age groups, we kind of, hit our marks and then we screen until we get people within that, the age groups that we want. And then we weight the results if we needed to. We did have to weight the online survey results because we can't really control that. Whoever gets in there, we let them. give us their opinion, and that was skewed a little older, so we did weight that a bit so that those results weren't, that they reflected more of the population age profile rather than who did the survey. So that required a little bit of weighting, not too bad. So those are I feel pretty good about the representation of the samples. I know in this, sample size is one thing, but as important as that is how representative is that sample. And I feel like this one was a pretty good representation in both of those segments. So we kind of start off asking people if they already have a membership to a health club, fitness center, et cetera. And when you look at the total trade area that we surveyed, about half indicated that they did have at least one membership. And those results varied a little bit by age, income, not really by child and household. Those are about the same. But you'll see there at the bottom, those last two bars, the DeSoto proper, that 222. Now, only a portion of those, of course, are included in the 403. I don't know if that hopefully that makes sense. So when you look at those results, you can see that DeSoto proper, the incidence of health club membership is not quite as high currently. And the next slide, we asked them, well, where do you have these memberships? Multiple replies were accepted if they had more than one. These results show just the solid blue, or the darker blue is the total sample, and the lighter is the DeSoto proper. And you can kind of see the facilities that larger shares go to Planet Fitness, Lenexa Rec Center, Genesis. And then YMCA does fall in there where, and then if you look at the table, that's mostly Bonner Springs. When you look at the total base, that's 4%, or of that 9% net is the Bonner Springs Family YMCA. And then one thing I didn't mention over in the report, but down at the bottom there, for the DeSoto proper, that Great Life Golf and Fitness also has a meaningful share of the memberships. And then we also asked about type of membership that you have now. Is it individual, 2 adults, family? And this slide shows that the majority of the memberships that exist today are individual. And that comes into play a little bit later because when we think about a YMCA facility, there's lots of different types of memberships. There's individual, family, 2 adults, senior, et cetera. So we'll kind of call back to these results in a bit, but the ones that exist now are primarily, or half of them are individual memberships as opposed to family. And those results vary. I didn't show it there, but as you would expect, it varies by household composition. And then this next slide here, this is kind of the key. We start off where we're talking about, we describe briefly to the respondents what we're talking about, the DeSoto Community Center. We mentioned a few things of, here I can kind of show you how we say that, because we kind of give them a sense of what we're talking about here. Is at the present time, City of DeSoto is in partnership with YMCA is considering construction of a new community center YMCA located in DeSoto. I don't say exactly where, just in DeSoto, which would include a full range of recreation and fitness facilities, exercise classes, gymnasium, indoor pool, multi-purpose rooms, etc. So then we asked them, how likely would you be you or others in your household, to use this new community center, assuming the cost was what you considered to be reasonable? So we kind of start out there and we address costs later. So this gives us a sense of how likely people would be to use it. And these results, we give them a scale: definitely would, probably would, might, probably not, definitely not. So you can see here that about half of the total sample, the total that we interviewed, total households, would, at least, might. And then we look at that definitely, probably, totals to about 29, about 3 in 10. It does vary significantly by age, where the younger folks are a little more interested than the older, as are those with a child in the household versus those without. Interestingly, the country club membership status doesn't really impact or diminish the interest. Those that have a membership now are still as interested, if not more, than the non-members. So that didn't dissuade them. Now, As you would expect, since the community center we're talking about is in DeSoto, people that lived in DeSoto proper far more interested or likely to use the facility than those in the other areas that we surveyed. Any questions so far? I feel like I'm just rattling off stuff. Okay. Next slide, we just asked those who might, that 21%, we asked them what would that, what would your interest or your likelihood to use depend on? And we asked that question in an open-ended fashion. They tell us, we don't give them reasons. And then we categorize those for analysis purposes. And you can see here that about half of the 84 people that said might mentioned, location or distance concerns, or that would depend on the location. Cost, hours, does it fit my schedule, kind of pop in there as well. As far as why you would not, and we asked those folks, why would you not be likely to use it? And again, a lot of those people are not in DeSoto. Location, distance is the primary reason there. Too far away. So then we take those people that we just talked about that at least might, and we're calling them the potential interest segment. And we asked those folks some additional questions about features, amenities, et cetera. We didn't bother to ask the people that, said they wouldn't use it. So we wanted to look at that high potential segment. How important are certain features and amenities to you? And we list several here that are, all the ones listed here are what we asked of everyone who at least might use the new facility. And you can kind of see, we had them rate the importance on a 10-point scale, 10 being extremely and 1 being not at all. We kind of grouped them here based on 9-10 ratings. It's pretty high on a 10-point scale. And then the mean scores kind of take all of those, that full range into consideration. So you can see here that machine weights, strength equipment, cardio equipment, indoor rec, family pool, free weights, those all have a mean score of 8 or 8.1 or higher. So they're like the most important, followed indoor walking track, gymnasium, also pretty high. And then down there at the bottom, multi-use rooms, climbing wall, teen center. As you would expect, those are going to be a little narrower, a narrower segment of the population is going to be interested in that, and those scores are reflected there. That's not to say that those things are unimportant. It just means that they're going to have, they want to consider that's going to be less of the people that are going to be using the facility. They're going to use those types of features. The next chart there is specific programs and services. How likely would you be to use? And again, this is that high potential segment or the potential interest segment of those who at least might use the facility, which is half the sample of the 198 of the 403. And Lazy River was the most popular, that was definitely used, had the highest, definitely kind of sorts there to the top, along with Open Gym. You can see that those solid portion that definitely use bar is strongest for those, followed by group exercise classes for all ages, indoor lap swimming, starter fitness programs. Those are kind of near at the top. Down at the bottom are the more, again, sort of things that would be a narrower focus of, or narrower potential for, not as many people are going to be interested in adult swimming lessons, special needs programs, competitive swimming. But again, important to enough people are likely to be used by enough that you might want to still consider it. It'll just be more limited if offered. And then the next slide is, I separated the ones we asked about, that we asked everybody, versus those that we asked of only people who still had that potential that I was mentioning, but had children under 18. We didn't ask everybody these questions, but just those folks. So there was 89 of those. And here you can see that youth sports leagues ranks toward the top, or rates higher likely to use versus some of the other programs, but the enrichment programs, summer day camps, youth exercise, all pretty good potential with, nearly over half at least might use those as well. The drop-in childcare, we typically see that when we ask about that particular program. it's either an all or nothing. I think the people that have children, the young children, of course, they're gonna use it. The ones that aren't are the ones that have the older children, they probably aren't gonna need that. Now, this next slide is kind of a means to an end. We, as I mentioned, so far, everything that we've talked about are assuming a reasonable cost. So then we get into, we want to ask some price questions and price sensitivity, and we do some projections based on, you know, how likely would they be to use it and pay this much per month. So this question allows us to put each household in a bucket based on, regardless of interest. So we say, even if you aren't interested, if you were to consider it, which would best describe your household? What kind of membership? Would you be more, you know, as a one adult with children, 2 adults? And the reason we do that is because that's how the YMCA prices their memberships. So we want to give them a real life scenario for pricing purposes. So we used this question to then determine which pricing track we were going to go down and ask them about. We didn't want to ask them about all 6 of them, obviously, just the one that's most relevant for their household. So if you go to that next slide, then you see I've charted just the definitely and probablys here at all the different pricing scenarios. Now, this chart you have to keep in mind, but again, like I mentioned, they only got asked about one of these price groupings. So the sample sizes here need to be noted. So, and I did note them in there. So some of them are based on pretty small sample sizes, so take that into consideration. But the purpose of this chart is to see, does their likely interest move as the price goes down? So for example, one adult, how likely would you be if the cost was $74 per month? And you can see that no one said they definitely would, 7% said they probably would. So that is, and then when you move from 68 to 62, those numbers really don't move a lot. There's a little more go to probably would, but you can see one adult with children, that's only 23 people, but the price sensitivity is really absent. But if you go down to 2 adults with children, that's 160, so that's a little decent, more of a decent sample size of people. And it also is the group that's the largest of the people that would be likely using this. And so there you can see the price sensitivity is more elastic, where you have at $102 per month, only 9% definitely would, but if it was down to 90, that jumps to 19%. So that you can see is more price sensitive. And I don't know how this is done with in the real world, but I'd say, like, I think what this does show is maybe, at least for that group, if you got people in, more people are going to go at a lower rate. If I know the Y has, you know, some programs that help financially to kind of where you can bring that price down a little bit, isn't that right? And then so that shows you that those kind of programs could definitely have an impact on interest, especially with those families. Now, this next chart isn't a very fun one to present because it's just a lot of numbers.
A lot of numbers there.
But I can go through with what I know it does probably help to understand a little bit what is there. So what we do for Mark and his group is we try to get at some sort of projected revenue per month based on the results that we just talked about. And as researchers, we know that people don't just always do what they say they're going to do, right? I mean, you can say, I'm definitely going to do something in a survey, and you're not actually going to do it. So to do these estimates, we come up with what is a conservative, moderate, and aggressive estimate. And the conservative estimate is we're going to assume that only 30% of the definitelys, we're going to be able to convert 30% of the definitelys. None of the probablys, none of the mights, etc. So all of this, what I did to do this math is that 41,000 households that we talked about that are in the total area, which may be low. I know Mark and Brandon and Mike and I talked, and if the growth in the area, if in a couple of years when this thing is actually built, if it is, might be more significant than that, more, or that 41,000 might be more, right? So all of these numbers would go up accordingly. But basically, you take that 41,000, I took those percentages of the households that would be one adult, two adults, et cetera, and apportioned those households accordingly, did the math at the high, mid, and low price, took 30% of the definitely's, and that's how he come up with the percentage of households that would be interested at that conservative level, and then what that projects to revenue-wise, doing all the math with all those different amounts that we asked them about that vary based on the type. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we do that for a moderate estimate is 40% of the definitelys, and maybe we get 5% of the probablys. And I think Mark tells me that the aggressive estimate is probably a little too aggressive, but that would be 50% of the definitelys and 10% of the probablys. So, of course, actual conversion and attraction depends on so many things that this research can't measure, which is awareness of the facility, the actual facility itself, how excited people are once they use it, tell people about it, et cetera. So there's all kinds of things that can impact these numbers. But they do give the YMCA, at least, and you a sense of what the potential would be to either determine is a go or no go, or what size of facility it should be or could support, that type of thing. That, of course, is above my pay grade. I'm just bringing the numbers, and then they take it from there. Any questions about that one?
Not for you.
Okay, so this next chart, this is now where we are only talking to the DeSoto residents only, DeSoto proper, because they're the ones that are gonna have to, if it does become a tax increase, et cetera, or special tax, they're the ones. So right now, at this point in the survey, we've skipped the people that do not live in DeSoto proper. And this is where that postcard sample really comes in, because that allowed us to have a decent sample size here. So of the people that we asked, okay, if DeSoto, hypothetically needed to fund the construction through some sort of tax, what type of tax structure would you be most likely to, would you prefer? And we gave them the options of a sales tax, a property tax, a combination of both, or would you not support an increase of any kind? And here you see, now there were some that just didn't know, and they're excluded from here. So this is just based on the DeSoto residents that were able to respond to this question. And you can see here that the sales tax increase, if that were the case, is far more popular than a property tax increase. But the combination is significant or meaningful there too. These results did vary significantly by age, with the 35 to 54-year-olds more likely to support a sales tax increase. And as incomes increased, the sales tax option, or even just the support of any kind of increase, or any kind of tax increased with income. And then, as you would expect, if they're really interested in the community center, the definitely probably would use, they're going to be more inclined to support some type of tax structure. And again, that was assuming they don't know how much that is, right? So the next question we said, well, regardless of what they said to that previous question, we said, well, would you favor or oppose if the tax increase to fund the construction was about $30 a month out of your pocket? And then if they said they'd favor that, we moved on. If they said they opposed it, say, well, what if it was about $20? What if it was 10? What if it was 5? So you can see here that the favor percentage, as you would expect, increases as that per month amount decreases. And this question we haven't asked in any of the other studies. This is unique to DeSoto in that, because Brandon explained to me that it's possible that the construction could be funded without any tax increase. So we did have a question in here. And then maybe instead of with that extra revenue, additional revenue through commercial development or wherever that comes from, would you prefer the community center or would you prefer a tax reduction? So it was, without getting into the nitty gritty, because over the phone and with surveys you have to kind of keep it simple. we just said, yeah, would you prefer a new, given all that, would you prefer a new community center or a tax reduction? So 54 to 34 was the breakout there. 54% would prefer the new community center, 34% a tax reduction, 12% not sure. And that's all of the DeSoto residents, the 222. Those results varied a little bit by age and gender. And of course, as you would expect, if people are more inclined to use or want the proposed facility, they were more likely to favor or to choose that option, as you would expect. So any questions or surprises on that? I was kind of surprised actually that people, I think that suggests that the community center is something that people really must want, or, because most people don't turn down a tax reduction, right? So that's all, that concludes the questions that we have about the community center. I know that a lot of folks wanted to also ask some questions about building a childcare facility, but we had the discussion that we could maybe touch on that, but this is not the sample that we would need to listen to. We would have to have a larger sample of people that are the target for childcare centers, which aren't people like me, but so we did have 40%, 41% roughly of folks in the sample had a child under 18 in the household, so we just decided to start there, and we asked them, do you currently use any childcare or daycare services while working outside the home? Was the first question we asked, and 27% of those folks did, with obvious differences by age. And then the percentage is off to the right here, projects that yes, currently utilized to the total sample, so you kind of know what the total market, what percent of households are using some sort of childcare daycare center. And so we take those and projected that to the total sample, it's 11%. And that is a little bit higher in DeSoto proper than the balance of the area. I don't think those were statistically significant differences, but a slight difference there. Now the next slide, there is a difference. This slide asks everybody, do you have a potential need for any type of full-time or childcare or daycare services in the next few years, realizing that this facility is going to be built overnight. So do you anticipate over the next few years some sort of need? And that 11% that I said projected to the total that you use now, this is 10% have a potential need in the next few years. So that nets out similar to that. Now down here, the last two bars, the DeSoto proper versus balance, that is about, the DeSoto potential anticipated need is greater in DeSoto than the balance of the area by about a 2-to-1 margin, and that was statistically significant. And then the final thing we asked in this section was then their likelihood to consider using a new childcare facility that would be adjacent to or right next to the new community center. And we explained that you wouldn't have to be a member of the community center to use the daycare center, so or the childcare facility. So again, using that same scale, definitely use, probably use, might not, or probably not, probably definitely not. And here you can see that now, granted, this is a relatively small sample, only 39 folks were anticipated a need for having full-time or daycare in the next few years. So we only asked that group. So it is a small sample. Ideally, you'd want to do this research with more of those folks. But at least we got a flavor of it. I would say this is, at least exploratory and a first step toward gauging interest. And I would say these are pretty strong interest levels within that market segment, especially in the DeSoto proper. You can see that that is significantly higher than the balance of the area. Again, small sample sizes, but at least I think it's worth enough to further study or consideration. If these numbers came back much lower, then you might kind of go, well, that was a good idea, but I wouldn't do it, that other thing. But that wasn't the case. So,
Okay.
all right. I don't know if that was 20 minutes or not, but
Okay.
we got through it.
Yeah, pretty close. Mayor, I just wanted to kind of wrap this up. We did in the staff memo kind of outline some potential options for council to consider. But really what staff is looking for tonight is some direction. This is a large policy discussion at the council level, so we'll looking for engagement from the council and then finally some direction on next steps.
Okay. First, any questions from the council on the survey presentation that you didn't interject as the numbers would be presented? Overall, you're happy with the quantity of survey responses that you were able to obtain and feel that it's a valid representation of the market area for this
Yes,
potential
absolutely.
facility?
And sometimes we have to weight the data if we can't hit those targets, you know, but I think we were able to. And then like I said, I think a real benefit to having those postcards sent out like you all did, and you guys actually did the postcards, was being, you know, we can't control who does that, but I do feel like that 5% roughly, I think it was, maybe a little over, is a decent percent. But more importantly, I think with the phone survey and with the broader, and with the postcard, like I think I said this earlier, it's not so much how many, but is it representative? And I think it was. I think we did, you know, it was a good response rate from that standpoint. And getting people to do a phone survey these days is, you know, not easy, not for the faint of heart. But you know, I think we were able to accomplish that. And like I said, I think the postcard idea is also. It was a good response.
Yeah, it was also translated in Spanish. I don't know if I mentioned Maite in our committee, but she did sat down one afternoon and translated the whole survey into Spanish, so it was an option for
That's
Spanish
right.
speaking.
I forgot to mention that
Yeah.
because we did have one person do the survey in Spanish.
It was an option, yeah.
It wasn't all for naught.
Yes.
So, I mean, obviously, it looks like there's still a very strong interest in the community to explore the possibility of a community center, right? So I would think our options would be one or two then. I don't know if we're ready for an RFQ for a community center master plan, but maybe I would think we would do some internal research. I guess since we have representatives of the Y here, I would, and you've seen a lot of these surveys, I would ask if you had any comments you'd want to offer to us or things you'd want to share as we look to consider our next steps.
He has the hard part now.
Good evening. Mark Hewlett, I'm the president and CEO of the Y in Greater Kansas City. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of these. With all these pages, we really focus on this. This is where the data is and the number crunching for us to build a pro forma, to look at the opportunity to determine the size and the scope of it so we can try to produce as much as we can a sustainable model. Make it as close to break even if we can. The numbers here are strong. And with the conversation that Mike and Brandon and Kathy and Angie, our Chief Operating Officer, Angie Lashley's here as well, was there's very similar opportunities for our partnership that we had 20 years ago in Platte County. Platte County was a growing area, and the Platte County North facility is in the same type region as this. The growth wasn't fully there yet, but the base was there to get it started. And so the county built a facility that was about half the size that 10 years later when the growth came, they were able to add to it and accommodate that growth. And so I see those similarities. The numbers here in this market study are much stronger than the Platte County North ones were up in Platte City. So, you know, what we would do next, and the conversation for us is to take these numbers, put them into a pro forma, and build out multiple models based on the scenarios that you see. And yes, I'm still there where the aggressive one is not the one I would look at. You know, under promise, over deliver is the motto for sure. So we would build a pro forma, take that, and then try to adapt that. I'm not an architect, but I will. And there are folks that have been around for a while. We've been doing this for a while, and this is my second trip to DeSoto in the last 15 years, so I'm glad to be back. But we would build that and try to come up with some numbers to a size of facility. We could even get to the point where we feel comfortable in a range of what that might cost as well to build that. Again, we've been around doing this for the last 165 years in Kansas City, so.
I appreciate your insight. Thank
Okay,
you for your
yeah,
comments.
whatever, we're here to help you. This is what we do, and we believe that every community deserves a Y. We do.
Thanks. Comments, questions from council?
So I'm encouraged by the numbers and what I'm seeing. I think in the next steps, I would also want to see potential partners brought into discussions with it too, including school districts, since they are very eager to at least have a competition type pool, lap pool, and start bringing in what coalition can be brought to make this happen as well.
Yeah, financial feasibility was kind of next in my mind, and, you talk about building up a pro forma, the numbers in terms of the interest, and even some of the programming are strong, but, yeah, if you go, low price, obviously a lot of price elasticity here, low price conservative, 100, 120, mid-price moderate, 165, you're probably looking at that 120, 150 range. I don't know how aggressive you would get at a pro forma, but that's kind of a combination of the range of programming, therefore the cost of this facility. It's a low-cost facility, low programming, high-cost facility, high programming. What's the operational model based on the finances of user fees versus the capital stack that comes from user fees plus city's participation plus potentially partner participation, to see what's the range of financial feasibility or financial risk, and who carries the risk versus who carries the operating cost. Who carries the capital risk versus who carries the operating cost risk is the one thing I'd want to see, certainly before we got to any kind of RFQ where we're looking at an architect or anything like that. I think financial feasibility is the next thing I want to know.
Yes.
Yeah, I think, we all flipped to the same page as you were getting up there to speak, and I think, despite being a difficult chart, page to look at, that's definitely the one that's kind of the heart of the question there. I'd be really interested to see some benchmarking, especially similar communities, similar size communities. One question I had was, since for DeSoto residents, there's the potential that there would either be, a tax, or they would be foregoing a tax reduction for the facility. Do you typically offer residents where the community center is a lower membership rate than those from the surrounding area?
Yes.
Okay. I was thinking probably, but I didn't want to make any assumptions. And then, the child care facility was, part of the original grant application that led to this entire, discussion. Is that still something that would be considered at the point of, the pro forma and the scenarios that you're looking at?
We wouldn't be able to build that off of what we've got with this, but we could do some research and figure out what that might be. I think we might have done that with the original grant research.
Yeah.
I think there's some data there that we
There
might
is.
work with you.
Yeah, because although it is a small sample size, what jumped out to me on one of these pages, although childcare wasn't one of the highest, there's the page, wasn't one of the highest youth likely to use program, looking at definitely, probably, and might, it was the highest program with a definitely would response.
And that was childcare while you're working
So-
out. That was not the facility.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's the drop-in.
That
Oh,
was
that's
basically
drop-in.
nursery
Okay.
type
Like
drop-ins.
drop-in care
Got
at
it.
the facility, not the
Okay.
childcare center.
Yeah, okay, got it. But, the childcare feedback was also, I would say,
Sure.
fairly strong, though a small sample size.
I would agree.
Okay. Anything over here?
Nothing that hasn't already been said.
I was gonna say, one other question, does the Y work with insurance discount programs like Active and Fit and things like that,
Sewer
to where,
shapers, those types, yes.
okay, because I know that brings it down to like $29 per person, which makes the two-person, $58 instead of 90, so that also adds to some of the capability.
There's
As
all
far as
sorts of
membership.
mixed third-party opportunities in
Okay.
that realm too.
But do you get fully reimbursed in those, or are you taking, you're not taking any reduction when you do that?
They do not. There's also a lot of corporate partner opportunities. You know, we have models where we have corporate partners, so as an employee benefit, you know, we can, some companies will participate where they provide, you know, some support to employee well-being in their programs. And so there's a lot of opportunity for different rate options based on those partnership levels.
So I think what you're hearing, I think, is more work, but it's staff level. We're not ready
Yeah.
for that first one,
Okay.
but it's a work with our partners at the Y and
Yeah, okay. So what I heard is we'll come back with, work with them and come back with kind of a pro forma. And then the next step would be kind of the RFQ and the public engagement process. Is that kind of what we're looking at?
I
Just,
think so.
okay.
Yeah,
All right, thank you.
all right. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for the survey. Item 4B, receive a presentation on the 2025 Summer Market Series.
Good evening, council.
Do you want this? Is this what you want?
Yeah, at the beginning.
At the beginning. Okay, this is the beginning. Sorry.
Yes, perfect. Okay, so before we start launching our marketing for our summer event series, thought would be a good idea to tell you what is happening. So when you see the marketing for it, you're like, how are we going from 5 events in a summer to 21? So I'm going to give you a lot of detail for the background, but it'll all make sense. Okay, so for the last couple of years, at least, council has wanted staff to look into a farmer's market in 2024. We partnered with a local business to do it off-site at their private property, and it did not work out. We couldn't get enough vendors. So we said we will try again. You can go to the next slide. In 2025, but this time we were going to focus on somewhere downtown to make it more central. So at the end of last year, Bolin Farms reached out and wanted to help with the farmers market, and he was saying, I really think that you need to have a weekly market, and it should probably be on Fridays because the market isn't saturated already on Fridays. And I'm like, there's absolutely no way we are doing weekly and Fridays. We don't have the resources for that. That is insane. And he said, you should do it and add beer and music, and you've got an event. And so there's just no way. That's an insane amount of work to do 21 concerts. So at that exact same time, we happened to get an email from Stone Pillar Winery, who is coming to DeSoto, and they said, so we have a full calendar for the entire summer already built out every Friday. Can we do it downtown? What do you think? So kind of just a perfect storm of needs. So Stone Pillar is actually here tonight. That might come up later in chat. But so we decided to go for it. And then let's see, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so the event will be hosted by the city of DeSoto, but we have a lot of partners in this. It will be from May to September, every Friday. There's going to be a farmer's market from 4 to 8 p.m. and then a music series from 6:30 to 9:30. We have 21 events overall, and 4 of those are already events that we have at Riverfest Park, so they're incorporated, so not all of them are downtown. 17 are, and then 4 are at Riverfest. And then we hope to get 200 or 300 per event. And then there is a calendar, it's very small, of all the bands and the food trucks that are already booked for the summer. So you can go to the next one. We don't have a set layout yet, but what we do know for sure is the seating area will be between Forest of Nature and the bank parking lot. The band will be in the bank parking lot. It's already been approved by the bank. And they'll be facing south. We also know the restrooms will be in Dale's parking lot, and we have an extra dumpster coming behind Force of Nature, so the trash doesn't pile up during the events. But the two options, or at least two options right now, we don't know where the market booths will go, but we're hoping in one of the businesses downtown lots, or if that doesn't work out, somewhere on the streets.
And that's on me that we don't have that. I was supposed to get the answer from Dr.
wasn't-
Plastinsky, and I have not gotten the answer yet that we could use his parking lot.
I wasn't going to say that. Oh, thank you, Mayor, for doing all the help that you've done so far. Honestly, could not have done it without you. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. Obviously, we cannot do this by ourselves. So we had Stone Pillar, obviously, start the conversation, but they happen to be downtown in Force of Nature's basement. So Force of Nature has been involved as well, and then Bullen Farms, the Chamber of Commerce, we've met a couple of times trying to plan this whole thing out. But still with that, this is a lot on staff. And so we have a scope of work with Wendy Rose Events to plan a majority of the event and execute it. So they will handle the 17 downtown events. They go to the next slide. So on the city side, we'll do the event branding. We'll make sure the layout is approved for the temporary use permit and do the overall communications. And then we'll also do the permits, the weekly barricades, policing services, the music licenses, the utility access for the power, and then we'll pay for all the marketing, or most of the marketing budget and the deliverables. But on the contractor side, they're going to do all the planning in advance. So, and then the day of coordinator as well. So setup, check-in, troubleshooting, tear down, coordinating all the rentals, so the dumpsters, the porta potties, and the musicians. Thankfully, it's already booked, but they're handling all of that, all of the farmers market vendors as well. And then they're also securing sponsorships. We don't have a large one set in stone. We don't have the contract, so I don't want to say it yet, but we have a large portion of this already covered by a sponsor, so that is very exciting. And then they'll also help with marketing. And then Ashton is here tonight from Wendy Rose, as well as Randy, right? And Ashton would be the day of coordinator for this event. So Lifesaver. Okay, next. Where is this money coming from? We usually do 4 summer concerts, but we removed one of them because we had all of this coming, which would cover the cost of the contractor contract. And then the bands are already in the community events line item. That will cover the printing of flyers and banners and all of the marketing materials as well, and a portion of the digital marketing. And then the sponsorships will cover the bands, the 17 bands, the dumpsters, the porta potties, and then any additional funds we have will cover the advertising, extra advertising. So we have a lot of next steps. The first event is in less than 1 month, but here's all the things that we have upcoming. We need to finalize our name and logo and find more market vendors, obviously. Courtney, looking at you, Councilwoman Tripp. And then kind of confirm the layout. We need some final sponsorships and get all the marketing materials. And we'll be at the next council meeting for the temporary use permit. But there's a lot of information. Do you have any questions before I ask Stone Pillar to come
Any
up?
questions for Whitney on the summer concert events?
So for the vendor area, that's farmer's market, but also you've got, what about food? You've got pizza, you've got Force of Nature has food. Would food vendors be in the market?
There is one little baby cutie icon in there that says food truck. You cannot see it, and there's one food truck per event,
okay.
and it is just in the boundaries, or it might be outside
Okay,
the
so
boundaries.
food truck would be food alternative in that.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
and those are like I said, listed throughout the entire summer already, so we know who would be at those. But then the ones at Riverfest would have more vendors.
Food.
Yeah. And this will be a farmer's market as well as a homemade maker's craft market as well.
Are you picking and choosing the booths, or can anybody come and sign up to be a booth?
There's some stipulations, but as long as they are produce and handmade crafts or something like that, then
Okay.
they would accept it.
It sounded like you were going and like finding them. I didn't know if people could just.
That might happen. We will try to get people to apply, but we'll have to do some hunting to find some more to fill in. But
Any other questions?
Rapid fire.
Introduce George.
Yeah, I would like to introduce George from Stone Pillar, just to meet everyone. He's done, you can come up here.
Come on up. I just want to give everybody an opportunity to meet George Hoff with Stone Pillar Winery. Welcome to the community.
Hi, thank you. Yes. We haven't made an official announcement yet, but we did purchase the old Happy Valley Farm. So we closed on that last week, and we're excited to get a lot of work done. I'm sure you'll be seeing a little bit more of us in here as things progress, and we need some permits and whatnot.
Well, we're looking forward to this summer of concerts.
Yeah, we're
and
excited.
Markets and.
Yeah, I've got a fair amount of experience. I haven't done this for 15 years, and done several festivals ourselves. So I think we're going to be able to bring a lot to the table and help the logistics the day of, especially. That's where things can get troublesome, and troubleshooting those is where that experience comes in.
Certainly. Any questions from council for?
Just wanted to say thank you to Whitney and Stone Pillar and all the partners who came together to make this happen. It's really exciting to see what is coming together, and I think it'll be incredibly well received by the community. And yes, Whitney, I'll help you.
I think Bolin Farms and Steve Bolin and Christy have also been instrumental in kind of keeping this rolling along, right?
He knows all the details about farmers market, which none of us know anything about
Not
farmers
really,
market.
no.
So yes, he's been a blessing to have on the team.
All right.
All right.
Thank you
guys.
There was no action on this item, right, Whitney?
No.
All right. We'll move on in our agenda. Item 4C, consider engineering services agreement with HDR for the 95th Street preliminary engineering study.
Yeah, Council, just a quick introduction here. As we near finalization of the Southwest Growth Area Plan, part of that work Jay Amber has been involved with. He's the consultant with HDR that's teamed with Confluence on that. It's a transportation network analysis of the area. And I don't think we needed a consultant to tell us that 95th Street's probably going to need some improvements if we envision the growth that we've already discussed here in this meeting tonight. So the scope of work that's on this task order essentially would be to perform a preliminary engineering study of sorts that would kind of establish the road, the width, the profile, of course the alignment's pretty much where it's going to be, the limits of right-of-way, so that we can plan adequately, and then also estimate the cost of improvements. So this would be the section obviously between Sunflower Road and Lexington Avenue. A couple of years ago we did a very similar scope of work with BG Consultants, and I'll just pull that up real quick to give you an idea of the deliverable. Essentially it's some engineering plan and profile sheets here where you can see, where the extent of the pavements are going to be, the profile of the road, any grading limits as you need to get into that. So it'll enable us as development occurs to appropriately plan for that development. And then the other thing is here's kind of a detailed cost estimate so that we know what to expect there. So yeah, in a nutshell, Jay, unless you have anything to add, the scope would be essentially in addition, we've already got HDR under contract under our on-call services agreement, and this would essentially be a task order for that. I think we're up to 8 or 9, I can't remember. Patrick did point out to me one provision in there on that task order that he wants some modifications to regarding consultants' liability. So if you're inclined to with your approval, make that contingent on Patrick's review of that provision.
Okay.
Welcome, Jay. Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Mike and Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I don't have a presentation or anything, but just wanted to say how much HDR has appreciated working with the city the past several years, and always appreciate the potential opportunity to continue to help you all achieve your vision, which is a great vision for the Metro. And if you all have any questions for me, please let me know. But otherwise, just wanted to express our gratitude to continue working with you and see if you have any questions for me.
Any questions for Mike or Jay on the engineering study?
Yeah, just some, Jason, a little bit of clarification. I like your scope, I like the definition on it, I think it fits what we need. Just, where you talk about proposed right-of-way, you got plan profile sheets, grading limits, proposed right-of-way. And I presume, because later you talk about utility relocation costs, that you are capturing the adjacent utility easements that are gonna provide some restriction or constraint, as well as identifying utility locations beyond those that are gonna need to be relocated. But you're gonna be looking outside the right of way, right?
In a somewhat limited fashion, because we won't have actual survey for this. We'll be kind of relying on the GIS maps and and obviously the utilities that we can see above ground, far above ground. But yeah, we'll take all those things.
We have constraints from the new sewer and the new transmission line easement, and that'll constrain the limits of any potential new right of ways.
Yeah, that's
right of way preservation is something we want to be sure that comes out of this. PDS.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, setting those potential future right-of-way lines, thinking about the utilities.
So that if the property does turn over, then we know what is needed for that future right-of-way line.
Exactly, yeah.
And then in terms of payment, I'm pretty sure I know, I just want to ask, just to be clear, and payment to engineer, owner shall pay engineer for services rendered not to exceed $29,690. The scope is built on an hour and expense basis. I presume it's paid on an hour and expense. This is hour and expense not to exceed $29,690.
Yeah, that's correct, based on the billing rates.
So progress payments will be made on an hour expense.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so if we finish it in less than that, then you pay us less than that, for sure, yeah.
That's all I got.
All right, thank you. Any other? Nope, ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion to authorize the signing of task order 9 with HDR in the amount of $29,690 pending Patrick's review and edits with funding from the Capital Improvements Fund.
We'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane?
Yes.
McMorrin?
Yes.
Hanamud?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Tripp?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right.
Thank you.
Jay. Item D, consider engineering services agreement with Milburn Civil Engineering for drainage project study on 89th Street east of Kill Creek.
Yes, Council. This would be the first step in submitting a project for funding through a county program, the SMAC program, Stormwater Management Advisory Council program. Several years ago, they did a countywide study really of watersheds, including the one through DeSoto. And they did identify 89th Street, this culvert under 89th Street, as a potential flooding hazard location and one that would be a priority for funding for them. That's a program that offers 50% reimbursement of construction costs and 75% reimbursement of preliminary studies like the one that we're looking at right now. 89th Street has been more of a focus recently because we do have a residential subdivision that is in the works for this acreage north of 89th Street. We know 89th Street will need some improvements there. And at this location, which is, 1,000 feet east of Kill Creek Road, the road narrows to one lane. So there's a functionality function there that we'd like to get resolved. So that would be the project, essentially, to look at that culvert, see what needs to be done to replace it, and get it replaced to alleviate the flooding hazard, and also help with that roadway width issue. Again, the engineering study is just the first step in obtaining that. The county would reimburse 75% of the engineering feasibility study. So, in essence, we would only be on the hook for 25% of this. The fee is $32,800, and we're suggesting to fund that out of just engineering services line item in the general fund. So I'll stop there.
Questions for Mike?
Let me just make a comment. The contract is the template that we like engineers to sign as the city's form contract, so that all looks good. But I just thought I'd take the opportunity to point out, actually I think Mr. Milburn's out of town, but since he sits on the planning commission, he's not able to address the council. That's part of our code of ethics. So I just thought I'd point that out to you guys. I mean, obviously that's something we could change, but basically if you sit on another city board like planning commission or even BZA, you're not permitted to appear before the city council. So just something I thought I'd
You mean
point
I
out.
can't go out, sit, and then go out and represent a project?
You can't.
Oh.
So,
Yeah.
I just thought since I don't know that that's ever occurred before, but just thought I
I've
would
seen it.
mention that.
I swear I've seen it. Not here,
Yeah.
in some of the communities I've worked in. Any questions for Patrick, Mike, on the PES agreement?
No, I'll make a motion to approve the proposal for the PES in the amount of $32,800, the county reimbursing us for 75% of the cost, and authorize the city administrator to sign the agreement provided in the packet tonight.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Tripp,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanneman,
Yes.
McMorrin,
Yes.
Lane.
Yes.
Motion
All
carries.
Executive session, we do not have any items, so we'll go to advisory reports. Mike, anything for the group?
Yes, Council, just one thing, a reminder to complete that CIP survey. If you haven't done that, click that link and fill that out. Courtney, I appreciate your comment. Evidently, I have duplicated a project in there. So I think the best way to do it is just make sure your answer is consistent with, I'm not sure which one it was even. Sorry about that, but just do your best to have the same answer on both, and I think we can back that out of the analysis. We'll have a work session on April 17th. Still don't know what that agenda looks like as far as how long the agenda will be, so we might have a discussion during the regular council meeting. We might have a work session before. Regardless, I want to be able to provide you the results of your priority list as a baseline. I want to have staff members who are involved or who have submitted projects available that evening to discuss, scopes or intent or other ideas about that project. And then I also want to have some potential funding analysis scenarios for you, just so you can start getting an idea about tax implications or budgetary implications associated with the decisions you might make. So again, look for it. Well, by middle of next week, we'll know how that agenda is going to look. So we'll know if we want you here at 6 or if we want you here at 7.
Okay.
Sometime in there. So that's all I had, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Patrick?
Nothing for me.
All right. No planner? I should call on the Parks guy, just. No engineer?
No.
Brandon, Assistant City Administrator.
Just a couple quick updates on just some work plans. First of all, I want to thank Ed Good for filling in while I was gone. He did a great job. We did fill the Public Works admin position. That person starts on Monday. So that position from the budget was filled. On park stuff, we have the Riverfest master plan at the staff level. We're going to have a kickoff meeting next week. And then I know Councilmember Daniels and Mayor Walker, we've been meeting with Daryl Zimmerman on the Riverfest park sign. So I just wanted to let you guys know we are working on that. We're going to try to bring you guys some preliminary designs on that in May. So you guys can see and kind of make a decision on that project, which is in the work plan. Outside of that, that's about it.
All right. Thank you for that update. Council comments. Danny, you want to start us?
Nothing, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you.
Victoria?
Nothing.
Rob?
Nothing tonight.
Courtney?
Keep it consistent, nothing to add.
No?
Nothing.
Nothing? I'll just make it unanimous.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're adjourned.